And tonight we're starting with a little animated indie movie from France, I believe.
It's a mix of France, Latvia, and Belgium,
Yes.
where I
So,
believe that Latvia is the main, or at
uh,
least a main source of it.
okay, yeah, yes, and that movie is Flow.
Yes, which is currently available on HBO Max, or excuse me, Max.
It's just Max.
The artist formerly known as HBO Max.
Yes, yeah. Um, yeah, so this is a very unique, different kind of animated movie. Um, one that wasn't on my radar. I didn't know anything about it until DB mentioned it, as we were looking for stuff to watch after the show last week. And yeah, it's a not your typical animated movie about cute animals who are trying to survive in a post-apocalyptic world.
Yeah, I had heard about this one. I'd watched a brief review of it on Film Threat, and I don't know how interested I was because I'm not always the biggest fan of post-apocalyptic stuff.
Yeah.
Just not my bag. But the premise of this sounded interesting, and also the fact that it was made by uh, small studio out using the free software Blender, which
Yeah.
that it was so it's kind of interesting to see what somebody using freeware could come up with as far as a feature length movie goes.
Yeah, and I would say it as far as that goes, they did a solid job. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you have to dial down your expectations slightly in terms of not the animation itself, but the models of the characters, specifically the animal characters. One thing I kept noticing, and it took me a little bit to get used to this, was that okay, so we're spoiled by Pixar and to a lesser degree DreamWorks, where if Puss in Boots gets wet, you're going to see, he's going to be, you're going to have proper hair physics, right?
Right. Yeah.
Um, Going back all the way to Monsters Inc., part of why they made Monsters Inc. the way they did was because they wanted to push themselves to animate hair properly. So when Sully is moving around, all of his hairs are moving with him.
Yeah.
The animals in this one are a bit lower. I don't know what the terminology is. Lower texture, lower. Their light behaves with the animal models in an interesting way, is the way I'll put
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know if this is technically cell shading.
Maybe. The now that I think about it, the animation style kind of reminded me of that one Star Wars animated show. What was it called?
Oh, you mean the one that they tried to make with the sequel trilogy?
Yeah, yeah. Wasn't Rogue Squadron. It was like something along those lines. But yeah, it's very similar kind of animation style that um which I think that works better with animals maybe than with humans.
Oh yeah, like you're not going to get the same sort of uncanny valley.
Yeah.
And once I kind of got used to it, I didn't really notice it very often. It was especially odd in a few places how the animals, again, how light interacted with their fur. If it was
Yeah.
shade, I thought the animation looked a little bit better, but direct light was there were interesting things being done with how light bounced off of things.
Yeah.
I'll put it like this: there are a lot of secretary birds in this movie. So the secretary birds typically in this movie were mostly white with maybe like some gray splotches when they were in the direct sunlight. Secretary
Yeah.
birds, Daniel, I've shown you several pictures of them as we've talked about them.
Yeah. Yeah.
They tend to have a lot more dark going on with them.
Yeah. Yeah. Their feathers tend to be black. Yeah.
Yeah. where like in this movie, the secretary bird was much more white all around.
Yeah.
But then I was like, okay, so they just are animating a different color. But then I caught the secretary bird in a shadow, and that was it's like that looks more like the usual coloring. Oh, is it just weird things happening with the model and lighting? That was strange.
Yeah.
But okay, so we got into the animation weeds here.
Yes.
Like I said, it with the dialed in expectation that this is like the, I don't know, Latvian Ruby
Yeah.
to an extent. Very impressive.
Yes. Yeah.
And the environments are probably because the environments don't have to necessarily move that much. The environments don't have the same light oddities that the characters do.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
They also apparently used some sort of plug-in for Blender. I saw it mentioned in the credits to help with the water effects,
Okay.
which makes sense because they did some really elaborate water effects in this one.
Yes, there are. Yeah. Especially with the fish. Yeah.
Yeah, the fish, things jumping out of the water.
Yeah.
And it feels weird to talk about this much of the production before we get into the plot, but
Yeah.
I think that's a lot of the experience of this movie because there is no, like, not a single line of spoken dialogue. Animals make noises, there's music.
Yeah. But yeah, most of the what would be considered dialogue is usually through body language.
Yep. So the animation is very important.
Yeah.
Also, the Foley work, the sound effects, mwah, perfect.
Yeah.
Sells the scenes. It all comes together, so you never have to guess what a character is thinking at the time, which is an
Yeah.
accomplishment for a bunch of mostly photorealistic animals, I would say. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
like maybe a slightly anthropomorphized, but it's like 80-20.
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah. Yeah, as far as the plot of the movie goes, it's a simple plot. I mean, like we said, it's in a set in this post-apocalyptic like forest where there are remnants of a human civilization, but there are no humans around. And we've got our main character who's a black cat, and he or she kind of acts like a typical outdoor house cat, just, roams around, kills a few birds and does whatever, and then goes back home and sleeps. It has a run in with a pack of dogs, and then but then uh, things change when the cat's home floods, and the whole area, the whole valley, wherever they are, floods. And so the cat ends up on a boat, which is occupied by a capybara.
Capybara.
Capybara, sorry. Yeah, I couldn't know it was capybara or capybara. Capybara, yeah, which is kind of like it, folks out there, you've probably seen pictures of one and you just didn't know what it was called.
You know what? They had a poster that they had as an alternative to this one. Let me go. That had all the characters. One sec.
Yeah, and so then of course, as the cat and the capybara are floating along, they encounter other aliens. Yeah, the capybara is there next to the golden
Yeah.
retriever.
If you don't know, basically imagine a guinea pig the size of an actual pig.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So we got our cat, and then there's got our golden retriever who
He's a
really,
good boy.
he's a good boy. Yeah, and he really likes the cat, but the cat's just kind of like a cat and just doesn't care.
Yeah.
And then they also meet a lemur who is like a scavenger. And last but not least, we have our main secretary bird there, who during one little encounter, his flock wanted to do something bad to the cat, but then he stands up to the head bird, but then he loses, and the head bird breaks his wing.
Yep. So he ends up hanging out with them.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I
Yeah.
think that's so. I will say one trigger warning. I know it's funny. There are people who can watch a zombie movie and not blink an eye. You show a cat in distress for 5 minutes and it's just like, oh no, 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 please save that cat. Oh,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
there's a lot of scenes where the cat almost drowns in the flooding water. There's a lot of scenes of peril, animals in pain,
Yeah.
um, animals in distress. That's like the only really big caveat I would have on this one. Is like I would say this is pretty much in all ages, just because of the subject matter. You know, anyone can relate
Yeah.
to an animal trying to escape.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, but yeah, and then of course as they're floating along on this boat, they keep getting closer and closer to this really tall rock formation thing that looks like something out of Middle Earth.
Yeah, that was the other thing is I kept trying to figure out where this was because some of the cities kind of look like Italy, in my opinion, like
Yeah.
or some sort of Mediterranean. But then there's a bunch of these towers that almost look like enormous termite mounds,
Yeah.
or maybe like something out of Southeast Asia. And also the animals are a mishmash from all around the world. But I just kind of took that as, oh, these are, some of these are feral zoo populations that got out.
Oh, yeah.
At least that was my headcanon for how that possibly made sense.
Yeah, yeah, I could see that. Yeah. Um yeah, and there's a fantasy element to this, which I think I kind of alluded to earlier. Um
Yes.
where it kind of doesn't really, you're not really entirely sure what's going on. There's like, is there like some kind of like god or goddess that's like watching over them, and they're drawing them to this place, and they got to do something,
Yeah, this isn't an entirely naturalistic movie, which kept throwing me off at times because, well, the animals move pretty realistically most of the time, and then it's like, oh, right, the cat is acting kind of human right now because this is a fantasy story.
Yeah.
the, the one that my biggest biology nerd uh, brain kept having to resist was they kind of portray the secretary birds in the wrong way.
Yeah.
Um, by which I mean that okay, secretary birds mostly ground living. They can fly all right, but like that, it's mostly used to escape from predators or to get up to their nests. But they're mostly ground living. They kick small things to death and then eat them.
Yeah.
Um, they in this one they're portrayed as being powerful flyers, and they're catching um, they're catching fish out of the water with their talons, which is like they don't really have talons that are designed for that.
Oh.
I kept thinking to myself, well, on the one hand, I like secretary birds, so it's cool that they're in the movie, but if I keep feeling like this should realistically be a heron.
Yeah.
But you know, artistic license, it is just a fantasy movie at the end of the day. And like
Yeah.
the first big hint that this is a fantasy movie is there's a whale character who is almost godlike in the way it's portrayed,
Yeah.
who he definitely is not any sort of normal whale. He has a bunch of weird tentacles and projections, and like his tail has too many flukes.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and yeah, it's yeah, and the other thing too is with there's I don't know how much in the spoilers we want to get into, but like, not that this movie's kind of
Um,
hard to
let's
spoil.
let's basically not talk about anything past when they run into the pack of dogs again,
Oh,
because I
okay.
because I think that's where like the real spoilers are at.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, well, one thing in particular that got me, which I thought was kind of clever, but then thinking about it, I'm like, okay, that's, well, again, the fantasy element where the cat learns, or figures out how to jump off the boat into the water, grab a fish, and then go back and then climb back into the boat. And he or she keeps going into the boat and grabbing getting the fish and bringing it into the boat, in which I know it's meant to kind of show like, oh, well, animals, adapt to, their surroundings so they can survive. But I don't know if a house cat like that could be able to learn how to do something like that.
Yeah, I kept trying to figure out how that was happening too. Early on, they looked like there were a lot of feral goldfish in there, so maybe they were dumb enough to not realize that the cat was trying to eat them. But
Yeah,
then like ended up being a lot more tropical fish. But
yeah.
on the flip side, the scenes of the cat catching the fish in the water were always really cool. I just kept expecting a shark to show up that never did.
Oh yeah. Yeah. But
But
yeah.
yeah, like it's definitely an experience. If you're a parent watching this with your kid, I expect to get a lot of questions about what's happening because I could see a child me. You know how it is like when a child is watching a movie with a parent and they don't understand something, they'll just ask the parent what's going on.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it does definitely keep your attention just because you can't really look away at all.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, if you look away for a second, you could very easily miss something.
Yep. But yeah, this is a very worthy effort, a
Hmm.
beautiful movie, um, very creative and well done. Pretty simple plot, which is not a problem at all,
Yeah.
especially when you're trying to get it all through body language. Um,
Yeah.
the only people I can think of who I wouldn't recommend this for are people who just philosophically cannot deal with watching a post-apocalyptic thing. Although, in my opinion, so you do see the house that the cat is living in. There is paper still there that's intact, and like the bed that the cat sleeps on is still intact. That tells
Yeah.
me that whoever was there wasn't dead for that long or gone for that long.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you could always headcanon it as, oh well, there's no people in this area, but
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, this could be like the apocalypse is very recent too, like in the last like
yeah,
couple of weeks or month or yeah.
right. I'm just saying that if you just cannot deal with that, that's how you could just compartmentalize it. It's like
Right. Yeah.
where, oh no, the humans all evacuated this area because they knew the flood was coming. But I think that would be rewriting the movie a bit too much. And then
Yeah.
again, like I said before, if you just cannot deal with the idea of an animal in distress, this is not the movie
Mm.
for you because animals are in distress the whole time, and it's often a very sort of realistic distress. Like
Yeah.
I felt every scene where the cat almost drowned.
Yeah, I did too. Yeah.
This must have been hard to animate at times.
See, yeah, yeah. uh, yeah. But yeah, I mean it's it's I think this could also be one of those movies that people could, like film school people, like real devotees of cinema could watch and pick up on like certain symbolism and
Yep.
hidden meanings to things and as you would in a European movie.
Yep. And it has been nominated for an Oscar for Best Animated Feature. And I'm trying to think of the 2024 competition. I never saw Inside Out 2 because I haven't seen Inside Out 1 yet.
Uh,
Um,
what didn't Boy and the Heron win last year?
em- Oscar Best Animated Film 2023. Oh, it was Pinocchio.
Pinocchio? What? Oh, it was that. Not the.
Guillermo del Toro's, not
Yeah,
the
yeah.
Disney live action
Right,
remake.
right. Yeah, yeah.
Oh no, that was for 2023. That's
Yeah,
right. Marcel the Shells with Shoes on was nominated in
uh,
2023. 2024 Oscar animated
I want to
winner.
say. I want to say it was Boy and the Heron.
That's yeah, okay, it was Boy and the Heron,
Yeah,
which honestly that wasn't the best Studio Ghibli movie ever. I
yeah.
think that was probably just like, you know how it is with certain creators who when they're about to retire, they get the pity Oscar or
Oh,
the
yeah,
or the
yeah.
like, this Oscar really represents your career Oscar.
Right. Yeah, yeah.
And again, given its competition, that no, wait, no. Was Puss in Boots that? No, Puss in Boots was the. If it beat Puss in Boots, I'm going to be irritated. I forget now.
Well, I know it beat Spider-Man into the whatever
Oh, that's right.
the
Puss in Boots was the
Spider-Verse
year
thing.
before. Puss
Okay.
in Boots threw me off because it came out very late in 2023.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I remember like Spider-Verse was nominated
Yes,
last
it
year.
was. Yeah,
Yeah,
it got beaten out.
yeah, and people were really mad about that. And it's like,
No, Boy and the Heron was a better movie than
yeah, it
Spider-Man
was.
Across the Spider-Verse.
It was. Yeah, yeah. Um, but yeah, this movie was good too. Check it out on Max. You know, it's only 90
Indeed.
minutes, so